Welcome back to part 2 of Meeting Our Children's Needs.
We've looked at 2 ways of showing love, 2 of the 5 love languages: affirming words and affectionate touch.
We're going on now to look at a 3rd love language, giving our children one-to-one time.
Child psychologist and co-author of the 5 love languages of children, Ross Campbell, writes, "One-to-one time is giving a child our full, undivided attention in such a way that he feels without doubt that he's completely loved. It makes a child feel he's the most important person in the world in his parents' eyes."
That's not to say our children need our full attention all the time, as that wouldn't be good for them either, and can lead to an unhealthy, child-centred family.
But they do need some special one-to-one time. And if we don't give it to them on a regular basis, they'll get our attention some other way, probably through bad behaviour, such as whining, crying, being rude, squabbling with brothers or sisters, and so on.
Children would rather have our negative attention, even when we're cross with them, than no attention at all. So we need to be aware that we can end up by only giving them our full attention when they're naughty, and thereby rewarding their bad behaviour.
There will be certain moments when they need extra one-to-one time from us. For example, when they start at a new school, when they're ill, when they've failed at something, or a friend has been mean to them. We need to be aware of those occasions.
Our children crave this one-to-one time with us, and that's not wrong. It's not going to spoil them.
I like being with my dad, because I don't really see him very often.
Yeah,
because
they're normally at work and they come home quite late.
Yeah.
So I never really get a chance to see my dad. It's only at weekends and stuff, but sometimes he's not even there for weekends. He's just like going away on a work thing or something. So.
Like my dad, I normally go to bed at 8 o'clock and my dad's like sometimes comes home at 9.
Special time with their parents affects their whole outlook on life. It's the most powerful way to build up our child's self-esteem, not just for now in the short term, but for the rest of their lives.
Children benefit when they have some one-to-one time with each of their parents, so a mother with a son or a father with a daughter, rather than only with a parent of the same sex.
I think Emma enjoys ballet, enjoys dance, and that's really not something I'm particularly interested in. But I know for her it's really important. And when I turn up to watch her on her show days, I can see her smile beaming because her daddy's made an effort to come and see her, and so I can see how important it is to her that I've made the effort, and that she feels that she's making me happy, makes her happy. So it is important. I know it's a very major thing for her to get involved in, and it's really important that I make the effort. So I'm anxious to do that whenever I can.
Me and Daddy, we went to the Natural History Museum in London and the Science Museum in London, and I liked it very much because we went by ourselves.
We go shopping together sometimes, like when my sister's at dance at school, we go out shopping, me and Mum, together.
And why do you like that?
Because we can just spend time together and we don't have my sister with me.
We can give this time in lots of different ways. With younger children, it could be reading a story, just the 2 of us, or doing some painting or cooking with them, or digging in the sandpit.
When they're young, 10 to 15 minutes of our undivided attention makes a big difference and goes a long way to keeping their emotional tank filled up.
I remember a floor puzzle, a jigsaw with really big pieces that I used to do with Benj when he was about 3. It was of Noah's Ark, with the ark at one end and all the animals going in 2 by 2, stretching across the room. When we first started doing this puzzle, it took us about 20 minutes and he loved it. However, after we'd done it several times, he could have completed it by himself in about 3 minutes flat. But he used to make it last for a good quarter of an hour because he loved the fact of having me all to himself down on the floor.
With older children, one-to-one time usually needs to be a bit longer, perhaps kicking a football around in the park, or a special shopping trip, or going to the cinema, going bowling, swimming, going out for a pizza, camping, even if it's only in the back garden, or whatever your child is particularly interested in.
Sometimes giving a child this one-to-one time involves seizing a window of opportunity. And that may be a struggle for us, particularly if it's inconvenient or feels rather boring or slows us down.
You know, I remember when Lloyd was a little boy, we used to have shaving tails. He would come into the bathroom about 7:30 in the morning and say, "Dad, tell me a story." It was the last thing on earth I want to do. But I'd make up a story about some bully in school and who got his comeuppance and so on. We did that week after week down the years. But I remember one November morning where I thought Lloyd didn't come today. And I remember yelling over the banister, "Lloyd, do you want a shaving story?" He said, "Dad, I'm playing with Kate. We'll do it tomorrow." There never was another one. We had lots of other great times together, but that little door of childhood closed. And if I'd known it was going to be the last one, I'd have made more of it.
One powerful way we can show our children they have our full, undivided attention is by giving them good eye contact. Eye contact shows that we're engaged with them and nurtures them at a deep emotional level. I always think of eye contact as a tangible way of loving our children. It's as if, as we look at them, we're pouring love into their lives. We're filling up their emotional tank.
It's worth thinking about whether we're using eye contact positively or negatively. I realised when our children were young that too often I was only using it negatively. I might say something like, "Josh, come here right now." If he ignored me, I'd get more insistent, put my head forwards and repeat, "Josh, come here right now and look at me when I'm speaking to you." And my eye contact was sending the message, "You're in trouble." I had to rescue eye contact from the negative realm and use it positively to build them up. So, for example, if Josh was in the sandpit building a sandcastle, I made a conscious effort to look him in the eye and say, "Well done, good digging."
Our children learn by our modelling. If we look them in the eye, they'll have the confidence to do the same with other people.
Diane used to say to me when the kids were small, "Kneel and cup their heads in your hands. Look in their eyes when they speak to you." You might have heard of the little girl who said, "Daddy, listen to me while I'm reading." And he had his head sunk into the newspaper. He said, "I am listening." "Silly Daddy," she said. "Don't you know you have to listen with your eyes as well?"
Yeah, I think eye contact really is important. So much as parents, we're sort of so busy, sometimes we just keep looking down at our children. And you know, just when you get down to their level, suddenly their eyes open up that much wider and they're like, "Wow, okay, I'm all ears and Dad's all ears and we're doing this thing together."
When we listen with our eyes, we say, "You are special to me, you matter. I'm giving you not just time, but myself."
Giving our children one-to-one time isn't complicated, but it can be challenging. And the more children we have, the harder it is. Looking back, I don't think I achieved it nearly as much as I would have liked to. So I was immensely encouraged that Ross Campbell, speaking not only as a professional psychologist, but as a parent, also found it hard. He said, "Finding time to be alone with a child free from other distractions is what I consider to be the most difficult aspect of good parenting."
Whatever our situation, most of us will struggle to make this time. Perhaps we feel bored by young children, or maybe we're exhausted or stressed by the demands of work or of life generally. Whatever the reason, we must make this time. Spending special one-to-one time sends the message to our children that we love them.
Nothing can rival, nothing can replace the special magical time that we can spend giving our children undivided one-on-one attention.
When I'm ill, which I was today, I have a lovely time with Mummy and Daddy. Well, if whoever it is, this time it was Mummy, which I had a lovely time. So
our 9-year-old, I walked to school. He would actually prefer to go in the car, but not just for environmental reasons. I actually get more time with him if I walk him. And so that's become something we can do every morning together. It's wonderful. That's one-to-one time. And our 7-year-old I take to ballet, and if ballet's not on, we go to a cafe instead. And that's really precious. And so I can see it becoming something more and more important to them, but certainly to me, and also something which is becoming a little bit easier as well.
20 minutes of one-to-one time, if that's what their love language is, makes a real difference. So, you know, in our household, the youngest one often gets sort of forgotten. So I might take him out for a hot chocolate after school, buy him a football magazine, or even just sit at home and make him hot chocolate and talk about football, which I'm not remotely interested in particularly, but that really does it for him.
The fourth way of showing love is through giving thoughtful presents.
Some people dismiss presents as materialism. But presents are not just about our children wanting to have things. Certainly, they can never be a substitute for the first 3 love languages: words, touch or time. If we give a child a ball, the first thing they're likely to say to us is, "Come and play with me." Or if we give them a bike, "Can we go on a bike ride?"
And we can't buy our children off with presents if we feel we've let them down in some way. Too many presents will spoil them, and that's not good for children. But well-timed and well-chosen presents, not just on their birthdays and at Christmas, are a powerful visual symbol of our love. These may be little things we find or buy for them.
A present can show a child that we've been thinking about him or her, perhaps when they weren't with us. And it can make them feel very loved when we've chosen something especially for them that we know they like.
Then every time they look at it or use it, it reminds them of our love in choosing it for them.
Little children often start to imitate present giving at a young age. They're quite likely to go around the house picking up objects, wrapping them up in newspaper or whatever, and presenting them to us. They're starting to learn about giving to others.
One important time to give presents is on a child's birthday. A birthday is an opportunity to celebrate their special place in the family and to demonstrate how much they're loved. For some children, this language of love really matters to them.
One of our daughters particularly just loves presents. She loves gifts. It doesn't have to be expensive or anything, but just particularly if if we know what she wants, if we've heard the comment or the phone call or whatever saying the thing that she's after.
And every now and again, just to catch them off guard, I'll bring a few sweets in my backpack from work. And, I'll say, "Oh, can you just go and look in my pocket in my backpack?" And they'll go in and they'll find the sweets, or you'll come out with them. And I think that's just quite a nice way to give gifts just sporadically, which goes down well.
I just don't buy presents for the sake of it, but occasionally I'll just find something that's just right for one of them, and I'll do it spontaneously.
I try to give presents that aren't necessarily bought as well, so that I might make something for her. And now what's interesting is that she will prefer that to something expensive. She'll prefer something that's well thought through and homemade.
I remember we were in a shop one day and Jacob saw this superhero dressing up suit and he really wanted it, and he just was at me to buy this suit, and I knew he just loved the character, and so I got him the suit. But Neil wanted one as well in his size, only partly because I was buying it for Jacob, and I just said to him, "But will you wear it?" And he said, "Oh, I will," but he didn't really. So I got the 2 suits. I ended up buying the 2 suits, but Neil really wasn't bothered with his. But Jacob got great enjoyment out of his one, and he really loved it. And it was a lesson. I think I learned that his love languages is gifts and things. And I mean, it worked well in the end, actually, because he grew into the bigger suit.
Some of us are more natural present givers than others. If I'm honest, presents don't mean that much to me. They come at the bottom of my list of the love languages. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily the same for our children. I remember once going into my study and seeing a note from Benj on my desk, which said, "Buy Benj a very expensive surprise present for being such a great son." It made me laugh, but it also made me think, when did I last do that? Spontaneously buy something for one of our children as a sign of my love for them.
And we found that as soon as Benj had enough money of his own, he started to buy presents for other people. And we suddenly realised this was an important way for him to feel loved and to show love. It remains one of his primary love languages.
The 5th love language is kind actions, or as Gary Chapman calls them, acts of service. These are the things that we do for our children.
I suspect that with this love language, you're thinking, I'm doing plenty of that. Household chores, shopping, transporting them around the place, working to provide for my family, and so on. And of course, parenting by its very nature is sacrificial, an act of service.
Inevitably, young children take for granted the things we do for them. They assume that's what we, their parents, are there for, to provide for them, to look after them. Teaching our children to appreciate what we do and to say thank you helps them to recognise we're not their slaves.
You may feel you're constantly reminding them to say please and thank you for whatever it is you do for them, whether it's making a meal or doing their washing. But we want to encourage you that gradually the message will be going in. And when they're older, rather than assuming the world owes them a living, they'll turn into people who are grateful for what others do for them.
As well as the regular day-to-day actions, there'll be other opportunities through kind actions to demonstrate to our children that we love them.
Some will be very small and seemingly insignificant actions, such as making sure they have a cardboard box or empty yoghurt pots for an art project at school, or spending hours teaching them to catch a ball or watch them play a sport or help them make something.
Our children will remember the things we do for them, and they'll make them feel loved and cared for. For some children, kind actions will be particularly important to keep their emotional tank full.
If something breaks, he'll bring it to me and he'll say, "Dad, please, can you fix this?" And I'll say, "Okay, just pop it there." And I know that I need to fix that thing because it'll mean a whole bunch to him.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's amazing. You come home and you've maybe fixed it the night before, and you come home at the end of the day and he's already noticed. He's like, "Wow, Dad, thanks for fixing that." Such a small thing, but it achieves a huge amount.
It's worth recognising that it's the attitude with which we do things for our children that will have an impact on them. If we're resentful about doing things for them, our children will tend to feel guilty. If, on the other hand, they get a sense that we're doing it out of love, it will help to fill up their emotional tank.
Scylla's least favourite job when our boys were all at the same school was making them a packed lunch before breakfast every morning. She longed for the day when this chore would be over. Soon after we first heard about the 5 love languages, we asked our children which of them was most important for them to feel loved. As one of our sons munched his way through his 3rd bowl of cereal, he said, "Well, actions really matter to me. I know Mum loves me because she makes me a packed lunch every day." It was extraordinary. I remember Scylla's face when he said that, utter amazement. And it changed her attitude overnight. She leapt out of bed the next morning, couldn't wait to make them. Well, not quite like that.
Not that our children weren't old enough to make their own packed lunches, but this was a practical job that I decided to do for them, as they had an early start and a complicated journey to school. But I had no idea of the emotional impact of making those lunches. And I felt completely different after that conversation. I realised I wasn't only filling their stomachs with food, but also helping to fill up their emotional tank with love.
As with all these love languages, it's our modelling that will be most significant for our children to learn to show love in this particular way.
I would say that kind actions are modelled by parents, and Sam is always very good at looking after me and making sure that my well-being is catered for, and our children see that, and our children are very good at looking after each other.
We need to give our children opportunities to express love through actions, even before they can do it as quickly or as well as we'd like them to.
Josh, when he was 10, used to enjoy making himself a milkshake when he got back from school. I used to look at them longingly. Then, one afternoon, he made one for me without me asking for it, and it was delicious. Later, I went into the kitchen and saw the scale of the mess. Josh had used double quantities in the blender, but had failed to put the lid on properly. Obviously, there was mess everywhere that needed clearing up, but it was far outweighed by how touched I felt by his kindness, and I told him as much.
The temptation for many of us is to do everything for our children, often because it's just easier. One mother recognised her desire to be in control was the reason she hadn't taught her 8-year-old son to use the washing machine. He was perfectly capable of learning, but she didn't trust him to sort the laundry properly or to do it as well as she could.
Children with the right guidance will often relish responsibility. It gives them an opportunity to grow in terms of their confidence, their self-esteem, their self-belief that A, they are trusted with something, and B, that they can rise to whatever the challenge of that is, have the satisfaction of seeing something through, carrying it through. Within a school environment, responsibility is a vital part of the workings of a community. As a school, you need children to take on elements of the running of the school day in terms of looking after their peers, in terms of simple things like supervision, gleaning ideas from others, being there as a listening ear for younger children, and so on. And as children grow with that, in a junior school where they can make mistakes and learn from that, it is a very much a developmental experience. When they become older, when they're into their late teens and have got big responsibilities that they're starting to make for life, if they have learnt to take responsibility, to play a part in their younger lives, then it becomes much more easy for them.
Actually, through doing it all ourselves, we're disempowering our children. One of our main jobs as parents is training them gradually to take responsibility, to look after themselves, and to start to help with household chores. And it's in the safety of the home that they best learn.
We have a loft conversion and we use the upstairs bathroom. The children usually use the downstairs bathroom and we very rarely go in there. And there was wee stains up the side, there's toothpaste marks down the sink. And I sat there and talked to the kids, but other people are coming into the house, they're using that, it's disgusting. Make sure all it is turn the tap on, let the spigot go down. And so in the end, after going on and on and on, I made the rota and they have to clean it. And you know what? The bathroom's beautiful now. So, and it's amazing, the kids take a bit of responsibility, they look after it.
Except for the one that has to clean the toilet.
The worst bit, well, it's obviously the toilet. All these bits of dirt around it, gunk. Disgusting. The sink is the second, but I wouldn't mind doing it. That has a bit, gunk as well. The bath is the best one, I think, to clean. If you don't want to get your hands all dirty and... disgusting, I must say.
It's not very nice.
They make sure that it's not their turn to clean the toilet. But some of them, Josiah actually asks to clean the bath sometimes, doesn't he, himself, because they like doing it. So they offer to clean, can I clean the floor? He loves cleaning the floor at the front. So they do. There are jobs that actually like to do. Yeah. Sometimes we think, I'm not going to want to do that. But actually, they do love some of it, so you might as well make the most of it. Eh?
Yeah. Allowing our children to take on responsibility for different roles appropriate to their age can also help to build stronger relationships within the family as each person plays their part.
I've encouraged the children to help me out around the house by letting them know that I'm not going to do everything for them. And it does get to the point where I've had to leave the playroom where you can't actually see the floor for 2 weeks at a time, and they know that that's their room to play in, that's their responsibility to tidy up. I will help them, but ultimately it's their responsibility. If they want to have a nice home, then they will do their fair share.
It wasn't easy at first. It's become a part of the DNA of our family, but with all things, that's about building consistency. I think one thing that really changed for us is when we changed our language. So, for example, they might have been going, why do we have to do this? It's Saturday, I hate Saturdays, we do this every Saturday. And in the beginning, we might have said, well, it's everybody's house and we've all got to pitch in and give them those sort of rather boring reasons, whereas now we'd sort of go, I know it's a drag and I'm sorry that we have to do it. It's just the way we like to clean up. But hey, look, would you prefer to do the hoovering and I'll do that ironing for you? Or to really come alongside them rather than be on them going, this is the way it is and you've just got to live with that. To understand that actually it's boring. Well, I find it boring. So I agree.
For those children for whom being shown kind actions is their primary love language, coming alongside them to help them in their tasks when they need it will be particularly important for them to feel loved and secure.
So, to sum up, time, words, touch, presence, actions. That list has been so helpful for us in 2 ways. First, as a checklist of whether we are showing our children love in all 5 ways.
Second, it's helped us identify which love languages are most important for each of them.
When I first learnt about love languages, I was, if I'm honest, I was quite sceptical about explaining it to a 7 and 8 or 8 and 10-year-old as they are now, thinking that they wouldn't really grasp it. But actually, if you take the time to chat to them about it as to what mummy needs or what daddy needs, or actually, in this situation, what you need, they do respond really well. It's time well spent.
Yeah, just knowing about love languages has really made me feel empowered as a parent to just deal with, it's explained why our children might be behaving a certain way, and just, I feel like now I can actually do something about that and help to make things better in our family and help to make them feel loved and in a practical way. It's very easy once you know what you're looking for.
I find the whole concept of love languages with the children hugely helpful because I think as they've got a little bit older, I've worked out a little bit which of each of them is. And so it's like I feel like sort of a toolbox, and there's some tools, and that, you know, if our 6-year-old, I know that his is touch. And so, you know, if he's sort of run a little bit low, it's rough and tumble. Actually, I suspect it's probably the same with our 2-year-old, although maybe it's a little bit early to tell. And with our 7-year-old, hers, I think, is definitely time. So I just find, you know, I think, oh, here's another tool I can use, an extra story at bedtime. That seems to do it. So I find having that in the front of my mind, those different love languages, are really, really useful.
We might not be able to discover straight away which of the love languages are most important for each child. And they won't be set in stone. As they get older, the order may well change. Or we may become aware of the need to concentrate on a different one.
With one of our children, it's always been very clear that spending time with him is the best way to fill his emotional tank.
For our daughter, time and kind actions are equally important to show her our love. With the other 2 boys, it hasn't been so clear as to which love language was most important, and using them all has been beneficial for our relationship and for them to feel loved.
As Rob Parsons says, if we can send our children into the world with an unshakable belief that there is at least one person who, irrespective of their grades, weight or athletic genius, loves and accepts them unconditionally, it's the greatest gift of all.
You'll see that we've put some homework in the manual to help you think through how we put these love languages into action.
I'm going to close with a final prayer. Do please stay as you are while I pray. Lord, thank you that you love us unconditionally. We ask that you would help us to love our children in the same way. In the midst of the busyness of life, help us to show them our love through giving them the time and affirmation they need. As we do this, may they grow in self-confidence to become open and trusting children who more easily build strong friendships themselves. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Right now, there's an opportunity for discussion, and you'll see that we've put some questions in the manual. Next session, we'll be looking at the importance of setting boundaries for our children. Until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.